was sleeping pretty good. We had about 10 people on the crew there. One of them came and woke me up. It was kind of hard to wake me up. I was 17 at the time. And he goes, wake up, they're throwing rocks.
I never didn't believe in Bigfoot. I never believed in it, I didn't believe in it. I never gave it any thought.
They kept wood knocking back and forth to each other, and it was in a pattern.
Barn owls don't typically throw rocks.
I come across these tracks.
Sasquatch is still not on my mind.
Fun fact, everyone, when you have a Bigfoot podcast and the guest only speaks in Pacific time zone, that's how you know it's about to get lit. And today is no different. I just invite everybody to please subscribe to the channel and share it as I adjust my headphones after the fact. I don't know what that's about. But I also invite everybody to check out my coffee sponsor, store.friggincoffee.com. It's right there on your screen and in the description as well. Today's guest is Mr. Daniel Perez from... You're from LA, aren't you? You're right now?
Yes.
Okay. And Bigfoot enthusiast since the 70s. Boggy Creek got him kicked off. For 25 years, he's written for Bigfoot Times. It's a newsletter, monthly newsletter. You can find that at bigfoottimes.net. Other than the newsletter, Daniel, have you ever had experiences yourself?
Yes.
There we go.
In 1980, I think it was August of 1980 in the state of California in Happy Camp, we were on an expedition with the Texas Bigfoot Research Society that came up to go look at the Patterson Gimlin film site. Long story short, we did not find it, but we camped at an area called Happy Camp at a campground, and I never saw anything. They never saw anything, but one night, late into the evening, I was sleeping in a hammock and it was very warm. So the way I remember it, I was sleeping on top of the sleeping bag on the hammock, but I was sleeping pretty good. And so we had about 10 people on the crew there. One of them came and woke me up, and it was kind of hard to wake me up. I was 17 at the time. And he goes, wake up, they're throwing rocks.
Ooh.
I'm thinking this is a dream, and then he did it again, kind of shook me a little bit, and then I could hear the rocks on the ground, and I go, wow, someone is really throwing rocks. So I got out of my hammock, and I'm standing there, and another rock comes, and it comes very close to where I'm standing, and this is in a campground, and there's no lighting, and it's very dark. The only thing that's lighting up anything is the starlights. And so then a guy from our crew from Texas comes running down this small hill towards us. And the first thing I notice about him is that he's wearing socks. And I'm thinking to myself that, wow, if he hits a rock as he's coming down this dirt hill, that's going to hurt a lot. And he proceeds to tell us that, he says, well, I went up there, looked around, and I didn't see anything. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm saying, that's because you did it. That he was the guy throwing the rocks. And then as the three of us are standing there, more rocks come. And they're about baseball size, and they're landing very close to us, but not hitting us. And then I immediately ruled him out as a suspect because he's right with us and the rocks are being thrown. So I guess maybe a few minutes go on, and then I yell up into the brush, up into the tree line, I go, ook, ook. And then the reply was a long, drawn out grr, like grr.
Mhm.
And then everything went silent, and that was it. And I can't say I saw anything. The next day we looked for footprints. We couldn't find anything. To this day, from that 1980 experience, I don't know if it was Bigfoot. It may have been, but I can't say positively. So when you talk about experiences in terms of being close, that may have been one of the times. But I should add, I was in Missouri in September of this year. And again, we had, it was part camp out, part Bigfoot meet. And so one of the ladies that was part of our camping crew was a lady by the name of Brandy Butcher, who lives in Missouri. And so on the final night, on the actual day that we were scheduled to leave, I was scheduled to get back on a plane, go back to the airport. In the early hours of the morning, she's sleeping in her car at the camp. It's not like a designated camp. It's just a private property, but it's all wooded. And it did rain quite a bit. So Brandy Butcher made a decision to sleep in her car. And I guess at 3:15 thereabouts on, I guess, September 17th of this year, she has a sighting of one of these things. And she says it was almost as tall as my brother. And she said her brother's about 6 feet, 6 inches tall, but way too wide. It was extremely wide. And it lasted, probably less than a minute, and it moved off. But whatever it was appeared to be circling on the perimeter of the campground. So again, I was in camp. I didn't see anything. I interviewed her. I thought, looking back on her encounter, because I was talking with her about 5 hours after the fact. And I reflected upon it as I'm thinking about interviewing her after the interview. I thought it's almost like she had a traffic collision and both cars pull over to the side of the road. And she was like in a little bit of a shock of what happened. And so there were many people there. She was the only person that saw it. But surprisingly, when I woke up in the morning, because we had a big storm the previous night, I met one of the people at the common laydown area where we had the food. And he tells me somebody was walking around my tent last night. And that's basically all he said. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, maybe so, maybe a deer or something like a common animal. I didn't think anything of it. And then as the minutes tick on, I'm talking with other people in the camp and I'm finding out about what happened with Brandy Butcher. And then I walk over to her and interview her. And so this is 2023, from 1980 to 2023. Again, if she really did have a sighting, which I totally believe she did, this was the second time I got really close. But again, I didn't see anything because I was asleep in my tent.
Just your luck, right?
Just my luck. Yeah. It's just like all you have to do is be one number away from winning the lotto and you still won't win.
That being close to witnesses, though, that still gives you that feeling.
Yes.
Like, wow, like you know now. That it's like being next to somebody who's not necessarily the same, who's sick, and like what it's like and what's going to happen.
Yes.
I described that wrong. You know what I mean? But somebody knows something definitely that not everybody gets to know. Like I guess I'm trying to say, like somebody who's terminally ill. Like you know when you're going to pass away. You know that Bigfoot, like, it's information you don't typically get as a human.
Yeah.
I described that totally wrong. I meant something totally different, and I went another direction. Nobody unsubscribe from making that analogy. But when I meet somebody who I know that knows the truth, it's weird just to be next to them. Like, man, your mind knows that they exist.
Yeah.
It's a weird sensation.
One thing it's interesting about eyewitnesses who've had a very close-up eyewitness account of a Bigfoot, there's no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't kind of believe or sort of believe. They're beyond belief. They know. They absolutely know that Bigfoot is real because they've seen one up close.
Mm-hmm. And the people who live with them have a different attitude toward them as well. It's not like I got to get all the pictures in the world. It's like they're protecting family members.
Right.
That's what that feels like. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
No.
Yeah, but it's so you're definitely a Bigfoot researcher then. That's what I was wondering if you, like me, you kind of collect stories, but you've been on the ground. I've been on one expedition and I think I kind of want to go on some more.
Yeah. I work full time and it isn't often that I have an opportunity to get out in the field, but when I do, it's always nice if something happens. I mean, that's what we're all hoping for, but you can't guarantee it.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, I did like an hour in the woods today, in it's about a 40 to 50 acre piece of property that they were growing oaks on to log in the future. And I was just looking at all the evidence that people call evidence, the tree bends and the frequency of the X's and things, kind of like an analysis thing. That was just fun enough, and that was just after Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
So just doing it all the time, it's cleansing. It makes you feel better regardless. The woods are special. So, and you took a crew to Bluff Creek and to find the Patterson Gimlin area. How common is that? I mean, is it well known, or do you have to find it?
Now it's basically like finding a McDonald's. I mean, it's clearly marked on the trail.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was going to ask.
The people who rediscovered it, I think about 2011, the Bluff Creek project, which included Robert Leiterman and Steven Strufert and some other people, is they basically got in there when it was all tremendously overgrown, and they started recognizing trees and stumps, and it eventually dawned on them that this is the location. And since that time, when they made their initial rediscovery of the Patterson Gimlin film site, a lot of us, including myself, we've cleared a lot of trees and brush away, and so it's much more recognizable today. Some of the things that you see in the background, the big tree especially that's seen on the back of the subject in the very background is still there, and many of the stumps are still there, and a debris pile is still there. And it's just amazing that if no one is there to touch it or alter it, that all of these artifacts, if you will, the trees, the stumps, are still there and in the right place. So we know for a fact, 100% certain, based on the Bluff Creek project's work, that film site is the film site. There's no plan B or plan C. There's only one Patterson Gimlin film site. So, and it's easy to get there. It is way in the woods, but still, once you get to the proper location, finding there's clearly marked trails.
Can you take an ATV there, or you got to hike?
You have to hike on foot. You could probably get one of those, a bicycle in there. Yeah. Even a bike with an electric bike, you could probably
e-bikes.
And I wouldn't be surprised by this time that someone has taken a bike in there, because you can bike in there, but what happens to the trails every year, because it gets so much tremendous rainfall, is that things grow over the trail and you have to cut back the vines and whatever.
Okay, so it's not a matter of it's a matter of ability, because it's grown over and it's the woods.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, you could be a senior citizen and still make the hike out there. It's not a bad hike at all.
How many miles is it?
For what was that?
How what's the distance to the little site, to their filming site?
The distance from where, though?
Well, I would just say the road, but
If you were to go off Highway 96 directly to the film site as the crow flies, you might be looking at maybe 25 miles
Huh.
direct. Not if you take the roads, it's going to be longer.
Okay. So what about from like Steven Strufert's bookstore? Like, is that a place you can?
Which would be from Willow Creek.
Yeah.
I would say I wrote down and put in the newsletter all the mileage figures.
I should go look at that.
I want to say it was probably 70 miles on the blacktop and on the dirt roads to get there.
Okay. So straight up from like the 25 miles, if you just go right as close as you can get driving, 25-mile walk.
No, once you start walking, it's maybe a mile and a half at best.
Oh, okay. So
no, once you leave your vehicle and get on the spur road and you hike,
I see what you're saying now. Yeah.
You're looking at maybe a mile and a half at best. And it's not a bad walk at all.
That doesn't sound bad.
Yeah, it's just nice to be there. And then I was there with a bunch of other people on the 50th anniversary of the film, October 20th of 2017. And it rained, and I think by the 21st, the early hours of the 21st, snow started coming down in that area too. And it's the first and only time I've seen snow personally in that area. So it did get really cold, but it was worth every penny of it because, you're there on the 50th anniversary. And because I'm 60, it's very unlikely I'll be able to be there on the 100th anniversary.
Well, you'll make it. You're healthy.
Well, we'll see.
Well, you got 40 more years.
Yeah.
You can do it. I knew the difference between Willow Creek and Bluff Creek in my mind, but I don't know why I got them mixed up. Like, I've definitely heard of them both.
Right.
I got the Bobcat Goldthwait thing mixed up in my head.
Yes.
Yeah, I've tried to get Steve to come on here before, but I think he thinks I'm a little too woo for him. And so he he said how much are you paying to be on there? I'm like, it's all right, man. You don't have to.
Yeah.
I enjoy all aspects of the phenomenon, not just a straight up, flesh and blood.
I was having a conversation just the other day on WhatsApp with a colleague of mine, Cameron Young from Canada. And I told him, and we were just having a general conversation. I said, I've never seen any reason ever to believe that Bigfoot is anything more than just a rare nocturnal animal that is natural to planet Earth. I've never seen anything paranormal about it.
You ever experienced like the mind games they've heard about or anything like that?
No.
I heard.
Personally, I never have. Whether other people have, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, the rock throwing thing, that's a telltale sign. Like you were saying, that's like it's not paranormal, obviously. It's just like a straight up, something a primate would do.
Right. Well, what was interesting about that is that was the summer of 1980 up in Happy Camp, California. It was very dark, and that whoever was throwing those rocks had the ability to see in the dark because those rocks could have hit us, but they did not. And they were landing maybe 5-6 feet away from us. So me, at least in my mind, in my memory, is that whoever was doing it could see very good at night.
I thought you were going to say the gentleman in the socks was evident that something was going down because he jumped out of his tent and the socks didn't even get dressed.
Yeah, I never even asked him about that later, but he did come from the tree line, from the hill, came down towards us in his socks. And again, my first thought was that I said, geez, if your sock with your foot in it hit a rock that's this lodged into the dirt, it's going to hurt a lot. And then he comes down and he's standing with us. And then I'm thinking like, you're the guy who's throwing the rocks. And then as he's standing with us, more rocks are thrown. And I said, well, I've eliminated him as a suspect.
Yeah. It's kind of like whenever you're watching Law and Order and they arrest somebody in the first 10 minutes. You're like, wait
Yeah.
a minute. You got another 45. What's going to happen? And the crime happens while he's in jail.
Yeah.
It's the same scenario. So we were talking before about the Patterson film. Have you ever heard about there being more to that film than just what we see? I'm sure you have, like the first part of it and the last part of it.
No.
Possibly rumors.
I've heard rumors, but it's just
Yeah.
like you have to have film evidence to support those rumors. And one rumor is that I had a vague recollection as a kid that the first part of the film that was shown in a commercial advertisement on TV is you actually see the subject stooped down at the creek before the film starts. And I brought that to the attention of Renee DeHinden, one of the prime main investigators back in the day. And he said, no, there is no film of the thing stooped at the creek. He says the film only starts when the subject is actually walking away, standing up, walking away from Roger Patterson. So that idea of this initial film is not so, but what's supported there is that, according to Roger Patterson, is that when he first saw the thing with his naked eye, is that it was stooped at the creek doing something, and then it stood up and then it walked away. And so that's the visual observation, not the camera observation. So that's the difference.
Yeah, you may have seen like a reenactment back then. You never know.
Right.
That was a big thing. Like, I'm only 40 now, but that was a big thing. Like, I remember back in the 80s and 90s that the reenactments, they loved them.
Right.
It's like that sounds like what made it happen. I heard a much grimmer, and you've heard this before, I'm sure, a much grimmer rumor about what happened before. About how have you never heard it?
I've heard a lot of rumors, but I don't pay too much attention to them.
Yeah, I just like I like taking it all in and pretending like it's a superhero kind of franchise and just enjoying it.
Right.
Because you never know. But there was one that was like he massacred a bunch of young ones before that happened. And they were burying them. That's crazy.
To my knowledge, that conspiracy theory, or whatever you want to call it, was generated between two people, M.K. Davis and David Paulides. And there's no basis in fact about that. It was that what happened is John Green had a film when they were up there, home movie, when they were up there, when the Blue Creek mountain tracks were seen prior to the Patterson film. And he was taking home movies, and I guess M.K. Davis got a copy of the movie and put it online. And I guess he overexposed or underexposed part of it where it looked like something near the water or by the water looked very red, and it was in his interpretation that it was blood, and hence I guess the massacre theory got started. And there's nothing to it, and it's just like, to begin with, that was the whole purpose of going out to Bluff Creek, is to get a Bigfoot. So if they massacred several bodies or whatever, then we would have evidence that Bigfoot is in fact a real species. But as we all know, there's no evidence of those bodies, and that massacre theory is not founded on anything but just nonsense.
Okay. When you said that where you lived and what you dealt with, I was like, I'm definitely going to ask him about that, because I just recently only heard it.
No, that's fine. There's a lot of, especially in this field, because it's so controversial, there's a lot of quote unquote experts that weigh in on the field who know very little about the subject at hand. That's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. And with the internet and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all these social media outlets, anybody could put their platform out there and say that they are the expert. They are the dean of Sasquatch.
I love the ones
Usually
that
it
say
isn't so.
something. I love the ones that say something definitely isn't something. I'm like, how do you know? Well, it's not that. What? Just like you don't have any evidence of this. You can't be like you're not the Neil deGrasse Tyson of Bigfoot. Some of these guys on the internet,
Right.
then they yell at you. They yell at people like me, like what kind of in your mom's basement are you doing over there?
Right.
Like, man,
The
you have as
thing, the
much
thing
evidence
is,
as I do.
it's the stuff that where you have some sort of documentary evidence where you could start making a comment about. But the
Mhm.
idea of the massacre, which was put to rest a long time ago, as far as
Mhm.
I'm concerned, has no basis to it whatsoever. The idea that there was another Patterson Gimlin film site that M.K. Davis espoused many years ago has been quietly put to rest too. And his location of the film site is incorrect. And other people have, before the Bluff Creek project, rediscovered the Patterson Gimlin film site. People didn't know exactly where the film site was. And a lot of people, including but not limited to M.K. Davis, were saying, oh, it's right here, it's right here. But those were early observations that proved to be wrong. It's almost like you could look at some of the early astronomers when we had very little tools about discovering our universe. There was the idea that the Earth was the center of the universe. And they said, no, 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 it's the sun is the center of the universe. And then they said, as we created more knowledge and more technology or instruments to look at our surroundings, we realized we're just a little star with the planets rotating around it, tucked away in the Milky Way galaxy, and we're not a big deal at all. And we're not in the center of the universe. And so it kind of burst your bubble.
We were a speck. It's
Exactly.
interesting. It's interesting you say Robert Leiderman. I'm having him on in a couple of weeks. I didn't know that about him.
Yeah, he wrote a very good book on the Bluff Creek project and the
Mhm.
rediscovery of the Patterson Gimlin film site. And so I think anyone who wants to know more about the rediscovery process should get his book, and it's available on Amazon. I'm not exactly certain what the title is. I'm embarrassed to say that, but maybe it's I forget the title, but just go to Amazon and type in Robert Leiderman.
Yeah, everyone has the internet. You don't even need information anymore.
Yeah.
You're an author too, aren't you? Or is it just the
Yes, I've authored a children's book, and I've authored a booklet called Bigfoot at Bluff Creek. And many people who have followed my work over the years considered Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, which is probably no more than 32 pages long. They consider Bigfoot at Bluff Creek the Bible on the Patterson Gimlin film site and the study of it. And so that's reprinted 2 times, initially printed in 1994 and then reprinted in 2003. But that's completely sold out. And I guess what few remaining copies you might be able to find on eBay. So I'm working on another effort similar to Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, but this one is going to be a pictorial discussion about the Patterson Gimlin film site. And this should be out by next year with never before seen photos of the film site taken by the late George Haas, who was a Bigfooter from the state of California, who's been gone for many, many years, but he was one of the co-founders of the Bay Area group. And so another point with George Haas, he went up to the Patterson Gimlin film site with John Green in June of 1968, in which you could see on YouTube the recreation film of the subject in the Patterson Gimlin film site with Jim McLaren, who's about 6'5" tall, as the stand-in for the subject. And John Green made that film. And when all this was going down, George Haas from Oakland, California, was there with them, taking slides of everything. So in this new book, you're going to be able to see images of the film site and angles of the film site like you've never seen before.
And that's coming out next year?
Yes.
What was the title again?
There's no specific title,
no
but
title.
it's going to be something like a pictorial discussion about the Patterson Gimlin film site.
But it'll be from you, so we'll just find it from there.
Yeah, it will definitely be from me.
I found the Robert Leiterman book too. It's just called the Bluff Creek Project.
There you go.
The Patterson Gimlin film site, A Journey to Rediscover. Okay.
My only real criticism about that book is that they should have done a lot more editing and trimmed it down quite a bit, because there's a lot of pages in it, and I think that they could have did some real good editing and trimmed it down quite a bit. Yep, that's the book. It's it's his journey of rediscovery of the film site.
We know it's kind of like he wants to make sure everything he had was in there. I know how he feels, like just death by PowerPoint. Just don't want to miss anything, and so it ends up being drinking from a fire hose when you get a hold of something like that.
I'm just glad that he did it, and then I'm glad that that like you said, it's all in there, plus the kitchen sink, and so that's his effort. And I guess I wrote an introduction in there, and so you could find a little bit of me in there as well.
Is this picture here a drone footage of the actual site?
I believe it is. I'm not sure who took it, and I want to say it may have been Rowdy Kelly, who was part of the group as well. Yeah. And he lives up in that Fortuna, California, or somewhere up in that area. And I think that's his image.
That's pretty cool. That's you don't think of it being like a real place in my mind. Like it just, I don't know why I would think it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's just like, the Patterson Gimlin film site. It has to be somewhere on the planet.
Yeah, it didn't go anywhere.
where JFK got assassinated in Dallas, Texas in 1963, it has to be somewhere. And it's just like, unlike the PG film site, the Kennedy site is very well established. I mean, there's no doubt where it is. I mean, all of these very famous things, it's just like, yeah, they have to have happened somewhere on the planet.
Now, in the days of Patterson, how far did he have to go on horseback?
Well,
according to a mile and a half.
According to Roger and Bob, they were up and down that creek quite a bit. And according to the newspaper article that was published in the Eureka Times Standard one day after the fact, is that according to Roger, I think they had just been up in that area just a few days earlier, and they made a decision to go look at that area again. How far, I think the question you want to ask is, how far was the movie site from where they were camped? I would say maybe a mile downstream. They were camped downstream from the film site, but the exact location of their campsite has never been established. Some of the researchers think they know where it is, but they're not exactly certain. I did receive some information that will be published in my book from Bob Gimlin directly, is that their campsite, according to Bob Gimlin, was on the same side of the creek as the film. So the subject was on one side of the creek, and they were camped on that same side of the creek, which would be considered, if you were thinking north and south, would be considered like on the western side of it, not the eastern side of the creek.
Okay.
I can understand why a lot of people obsess over the Patterson Gimlin film site or the film itself, but there's a lot of other evidence outside of that has to do with the entire topic. And I think a lot of people focus on me as the guy who's the expert on the PG film site, but that's just one snippet of evidence for the entire Bigfoot subject in North America. I mean, just recently, there was a sighting in Florida, and if you look at the Bigfoot Field Researchers BFRO.net website, a husband and wife were coming home from a Walmart, and they had seen one cross the road real quickly, and so that was reported on the site. And that was just it's November, so that was just last month, just a few weeks ago in the state of Florida. And then if you go to Missouri in the Ozarks in September 17th, Brandy Butcher had her sighting. So things are happening all over the United States.
Oh yeah.
Whether you're paying attention or not, and it's just like, so yeah, there are sightings all over the United States, and it's just like, you have to think about the eyewitnesses. Is that by far the majority of these people are not looking for any sort of real attention. They're just saying, hey, this is what I saw across the road, and I don't think it was a man in a suit, especially at that time at night.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the best story I've ever heard has been from South Mississippi. And it was a hunter experienced one scream at him from 30 yards away, saw it, looked him in the face. He didn't have video because he was just in his stand, but it's pretty intense.
Yeah, and so there's another case is like people are going out in the woods doing what they want to do, hunting or whatever the case may be, and they encounter a Bigfoot, and so oftentimes they might not have any conclusion. They might not think about Bigfoot in any way, whether they believe or disbelieve, but once they see something themselves, then it changes their entire reality, their picture of what reality is.
This guy even lost his job because of it.
Yeah.
He said it's freaked him out so bad he lost his job.
Yeah, I guess that could happen. It's just like, especially when you see something that's so unexpected.
And they all say the same thing. They all say, what do you do with that? I've heard that from 4 to 5, maybe to 6 different people. It's almost like my catchphrase I'm going to put on a T-shirt if I ever make any. Like, what do you do with that? It's not a bear. It's not a person.
Right. And especially a hunter out there with a tree stand. I think you said he had a tree stand in Mississippi.
Yeah, he was about 30 feet up, 20, 30 feet up.
Yeah, so he's probably got a rifle with him or whatever the case may be. And you take, for instance, that if you take the argument that this is just a man in a costume 30 yards away, is like the guy's on a suicide mission because he could be shot. And the guy could just say, well, that scared the heck out of me and I had to shoot it because I thought it was going to eat me alive or whatever the case may be. And so, so if it's people out there in costumes dressed as a Bigfoot, they're definitely on a suicide mission.
At this time of year, it's you're just wanting to get shot. Yeah,
and it's just like, I don't think there's many people out there doing that, perpetuating hoaxes.
No. Not that deep in the woods, not this time of year, not the people they don't know. He even said that he had a scope on it because he was watching it with a scope. And at one point he almost shot it, but he looked it in the face and couldn't do it. Because it was the same, like you said, like if it's either me or him scenario. He couldn't do it.
Yeah. It's oftentimes the people who are out there hunting, not hunting for Bigfoot, just hunting, is that if they do see it with a scope, that they see the humanity of the thing. In fact, there's a case that is in Robert Alley's book on Bigfoot in Alaska, or you might want to Google that yourself. I think it's Bigfoot in Alaska. But Robert Alley wrote a book on Bigfoot. And he's got one case from the state of Alaska where there was a guy out on a boat who had seen apparently a pregnant female out in the deep woods. And he put his scope on it with his rifle. And he thought about shooting, and he thought about shooting again, but he just couldn't come to do it because he felt that what he was looking at was like there was too much humanity in it. And he just said, and it was pregnant too, at least as far as he was concerned, because its belly was protruded, and he just felt this probably would not be a good decision. So he didn't shoot.
There's Robert Alley with Cliff Barrickman. Cool. The Rain Coast Sasquatch.
That's his book, The Rain Coast Sasquatch. And just so you know, on the BigfootTimes.net website,
Mhm.
I have accumulated now the largest repository of Bigfoot books in the world, in the sense that you could actually go to the website, and it's called Project Bigfoot Books, and it's the deepest, largest collection of Bigfoot and related books ever assembled in the world. And so anyone who wants to see what was published over the years, from the early days to the present time, can look at that book list. Not even the Library of Congress has a book list that deep. So this book list is ongoing, and it continues to update every week. We have over 1,400 books listed to date.
It's like 150 pages.
Yeah, just on books.
Golly.
So since no one is ever going to buy all of these books, you could see them online as to what's been published on the field. Yeah, and so that has been one of my projects I've wanted to do for many years, and finally it's happened. And so this is the #1 resource where you could see all the books. There it is, Raincoat Sasquatch. And so we list the book, who the author was, the ISBN number, the page count, and a short review or description of the book. And there's over 1,400 books now listed. And you see how easy it was for you to do what you just did to bring up that book? Just in a few seconds, you were able to pull it up.
Yep, it was on the front page too, just for the alphabetically, obviously.
Yeah. Well, it's because his last name is Alley, Alley.
Yeah. See if
So that is a resource out there that anyone could go to the website, and you have free access to all this information.
I didn't realize there was that many books on it. I guess there would be. It's a pretty popular subject.
Yeah, so if you were to look at one year, say for instance 1963, if you put 1963 in the search engine right there, the search button, and you just put in 1963, you will see there were only 3 books published on the subject at that time. As the years go on, the number of books that are published and printed on the Bigfoot subject dramatically increases.
My birth year. It's got two pages. Naked Came the Sasquatch.
That was a good fiction book.
Daniel Cohen. I know that name.
He's since passed away, but he wrote quite a few books.
Cool.
But yeah, so there on the Bigfoot Times website, you could, like I said, it's the deepest collection of books ever assembled on this topic. And it discusses not just Bigfoot, but the abominable snowmen, often known as the Yeti, the Yay Wren from Australia, Yay Wren from China, and the Yowie from Australia. It's got the whole ball of wax all in there.
They have a similar, is it like the same creature over there as it is here? Just a different color?
Let's just put it this way. Whether it's the same species, I'm not sure of, but it sure seems like very similar. So you could kind of think of it like alligators and crocodiles. They're not the same species, but they're very similar.
Yeah, they're like one notch off. I've heard it compared to like species of canine, how you got Chihuahuas and German Shepherds.
Right.
Same.
So what's happening like I said, what's happening in other parts of the world, if you were to go to Sumatra or Australia or China or the Himalayas or Russia, they have similar creatures. Whether they all are the same species or not, I'm not certain. But I would suspect, because of geographical distances and the space and time in between, that they might be different species. It's hard to believe that in this day and age, that we could have unknown primates living on the planet. But once you start getting out there, away from the big cities, you realize that the potential is vast. I mean, even here in Missouri and Florida, where we've just had recent sightings.
mean, look how vast those swamps are in Florida. That's like the size of a smaller state that nobody lives in the middle of a state.
I have, and just so you know, I just happen to have one with me. I want to talk for a moment about the Bigfoot Times newsletter.
All right.
This has been going on for over a quarter of a century in print. And so I'll hold up a copy of the newsletter. There it is right there, so you could see.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. And so this is a printed newsletter on paper that's mailed out to our membership every month. And so now we have close to 900 subscribers. So every month, this newsletter goes out to them. And we have a membership that spans the world. In the United States, our biggest membership is from the state of Ohio, surprisingly. Why? You would think it would be either Washington, Oregon, or California, but no, our biggest membership is from Ohio.
They got that Moderna monster out there, or whatever it's called. What's it called? The one in Ohio, the Melbourne monster. God.
The grass man.
There's a. It's close. Well, I mean, this is so irrelevant. I have to know. It's called the. I know the Ohio grass man. What you're talking about? Oh no, it's called it's almost like it sounds like Moderna. And I had somebody on here the other day that actually experienced it. It doesn't matter, but
the dog man.
It was an actual Bigfoot.
No, I don't know other names for it from the state of Ohio.
Yeah, they got the grass man you're talking about.
Yeah, I've heard of the grass man, but that's about it.
These people, what happened was they were riding around with an app playing the sounds, the Bigfoot sound app with the howls and, fill in the blank. And the kid had turned it off. And the mother said, turn that sound off. I'm trying to listen. And he goes, Mom, it's been off for 15 minutes. And they all start like, oh God. They heard it in the background. Or they heard it off in the woods. Yeah,
but Ohio has been a very good state for sightings and footprints. Why that's so, I don't know. I suspect there could be a lot of reasons, but I suspect primarily because the food resources are there to support a population of Bigfoot. Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of vast. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, Ohio is.
I've been to Ohio many times, and every time I get out there, I'm utterly surprised at how open the state of Ohio is. Basically, I don't know what the population is of Ohio is, but it, outside of the big cities, it's just like you start to get out there on the country roads and you realize that there's not a whole lot of people out there. And that's where you're getting all these Bigfoot reports. And the population of deer on Ohio, to the best of my memory, is over 1 million. And so there's a lot of deer in the state of Ohio. So there is a good food source for a Bigfoot.
I found it. It's called the Minerva monster.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's from a specific area.
Yeah. That's one little thing in the far east corner of it.
Right. It's basically the Minerva monster is just another Bigfoot. It's just a specific name. It's almost like you and I have names, and it's just like we're all still Homo sapiens.
We're all people. We're all people.
Exactly.
It was funny though. The way they were talking about it. They definitely heard something out there. It was wild. They turned off the app and still going. It's like a ghost story. There's a lot out there. I'm shocked. Have you dealt with a lot of people in your research that were habituation cases where they lived with them on an old farm and gifted?
No, I have not personally, but I've heard of these reports. And the more I study the subject, the more I realize that there is a possibility where there might be some sort of habituation. Mm-hmm. And I think Autumn Williams, many years ago, when she gave a talk, she was the first researcher that I know of that actually brought that name out habituation. And I didn't think much of it at the time, but now I think much more of it because, yeah, if a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot got onto private property and say that homeowner has 10 acres, which is a lot, and wooded acres, is that
It's dense.
there might be a small family group living on their property rent free because they feel safe there. There's water resources, there's food resources, and they just, because they live on that property or live in that area, that the homeowners or whoever lives at the property might have continuous encounters with them. Why they don't have a whole lot of photographic evidence, I don't know, but at least they're claiming habituation, and I don't see it as a sign of hoaxing. I just think that maybe they just aren't getting that Kodak moment where they've got a good picture like Roger Patterson did in 1967.
And they also have iPhones and digital cameras. They don't have the wind up non-electrical model either.
Right.
I think that helped him out a lot.
When I was in Ohio just a few years ago at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, we went to B. Mills's property, who had found quite a bit of evidence, and we went to a location where a property owner had actually had a sighting, and they took a picture of it, but because they were on the opposite side of the creek and there was so much brush in between them that it was hard to get a very good image because the brush just blocks everything out.
And they blend in pretty well from just what I've seen, about like a deer does into its surrounding.
Yes, oftentimes.
That's the most frustrating thing in the world, because you get people like that say they see them like you would see them at a zoo, and like, well, where's the pictures? I'm like, I never get good ones. I'm like, come on, man, killing me. Yeah, get some good pictures. But yeah, and oftentimes it's always a thing of they don't want to draw attention to their property either.
Well, I think sooner or later that someone is probably going to come up with a very good video of a Bigfoot that is legitimate. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I've seen like good thermals of them, and IR at night, but never during the day. Obviously, you've probably seen better than I have.
Well, the Stacy Brown Jr. and Sr. video from the state of Florida, as far as I'm concerned, is very good evidence of one. Not everyone believes they're thermal, but I have no reason to doubt it. And so that's really good evidence. And I remember when Stacy Brown Sr. was still living, I did a phone interview with both of them, and I was very convinced by what had transpired and the whole incident. And they were very lucky. They were in the right area, and they've got that short video, and to me, it's very believable.
I had to look up which one that was. Yeah, I remember that one when it first came out.
I think, to my knowledge, it was shown on what was that show called? That not Expedition Bigfoot, but Finding Bigfoot.
Yeah, Finding Bigfoot with Matt Moneymaker.
Yes,
I got that. I've got it above your screen now. Hang on. Where'd you go? Come back. What about the one? Did you mention Mike Green earlier with the?
No, I did not.
The squeaky one.
But
you said somebody else Green.
I met Michael Green before he passed away in 2009 at the Yakima Bigfoot Roundup, which was kind of a celebration for Bob Gimlin, but he was there. And to my memory, that was the first time he showed publicly his video. And I was quite impressed, where there was, I guess, a candy bar or something left as bait, and this thing came in and stealthily collected the goods and took off. And he was there to get video, or thermal video. And so he discussed in 2009 as to what transpired. I guess it was in North Carolina. And I was very impressed. And so I consider Michael Green's thermal video as legitimate. I have
That
no
was he was
reason-
leaving Snickers bars, wasn't he?
a Daggett bar or something.
Yeah,
Something
Daggett
like
bar. Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, it was something like that, and I guess he thought that would be good bait, and it worked out to be that. And it's funny though, as I'd have to see the video again, but as the subject approached, it approached almost with the realization that it was being observed somehow, because as far as I remember, it was on its
Mhm.
it was on its stomach, approaching the log or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And kind of reached up, collected the candy bar or whatever, and then took off. And so it seemed to be aware that somehow, some way it was being observed, but nonetheless it went for the bait and got the bait and took off.
I know at one point it was crawling up like a little robber, like Ocean's 11, trying to grab it, and then you see
Yeah.
it in the background. It jumps up and takes off.
So yeah, I consider the Michael Green video as legitimate, or as good as you can get. So on the Bigfoot Times Net website, what I've been contemplating, because as you saw in one section, we have this massive book listing, is to start another listing of all the photographic evidence that has been collected on Bigfoot and related beings, and to put it up there. The ones where we have confidence in. Not the ones that you find on YouTube where you don't know the location or you don't know who shot it. With Michael Green and with Stacy Brown, we know who shot the videos or the thermals, and we have the locations. So where you have a lot of YouTube videos where you could find every day that does not have the location or does not have the name of the person who shot the video, then immediately there's doubt. And so in the future, time permitting, I might start a new list with all the videos that have some sort of credence to them, where there's a name associated with it and a location.
That'd be good. That would be as good as the Library of Congress, because there's not one right now. It's just all people like you and sort of subsequently people like me that just pass them down around the campfire, show them on a phone. Like, have you seen this one? No, I haven't.
So I think I'm contemplating doing that in the future, but at best I could probably only put links as to where to go see these videos, because a lot of this material is copyrighted. So you can't actually put it on your website without permission.
Yeah, you
But
can't
if
embed it.
if you put a link, that sends you to their site. So therefore you're not violating anyone's copyright. You're just saying, oh, here's the directions to go see that. But if they're all in one place, then that would be nice, because there again is another resource that a lot of Bigfooters would say, hey, this will come in handy.
Yeah, if you can create a resource like that, like the book one is already good enough. But a resource to go to just see the legit stuff, I think that'd be good, because right now there's nothing. There's like word of mouth. There's just people talking about it, and you're like, "What is that?" Well, that's just a person in a suit. You get geotags and things. Well, Daniel, it's been about an hour. I was going to
say we're close to winding down. Are there any more specific questions you want to ask?
Not really. I had one thing. It's like hyperbolic, but what do you think it would take to get a decent evidence? Like what's going to be the circumstances that come together to get that holy grail minus a Bigfoot body, obviously?
I think there's no decent evidence or any more films or video that are going to suffice as
no one's going to take it.
I think this discussion always comes up when anyone has an intelligent conversation about the subject, is that the only thing that will suffice as evidence is a body or a portion of a body of a Bigfoot on a table where there's irrefutable proof that this species exists. Because we all know that a video could be tampered or faked or doubted or whatever the case, but when you have a body, there's no doubt. And so anyone who's serious about the subject matter knows that a body is the only thing that will prove the matter.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm not advocating go out
No.
and kill one, but I'm pretty certain that in order to prove that Bigfoot is a real species, that this is what is going to have to happen
Yeah.
to go to the next step.
I've got a biologist friend who's coming up with a plan to gift one back and forth, get trustworthy enough to get one that died of natural causes given to him, but that'd take 35 years, if at all. Well, all right, Daniel, you've been a great guest, and thanks for coming on. I'm glad we could accommodate your early times because it helps everybody. I can go to bed now. It's cool.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me. And just remember, I'm the guy who's published the Bigfoot Times newsletter for over a quarter of a century.
Yep. And it's going to be bigfoottimes.net, and it'll be in the description. And I may have to subscribe to that. And let me know when this pictorial guide comes out.
Next year. Yep. Thank you for having me. We'll chat later.
All right. God bless. See you, everybody.